Commodore fans, are you ready? It's time for another episode of the Vandy247 podcast on the 440 Sports Network. Keep it locked right here for the best Vanderbilt coverage. Whether it's Clark Lee on the gridiron, Mark Byington and Shea Ralph on the hardwood, or Tim Corbin on the diamond, the Vandy247 crew has you covered. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Also, like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's free and easy to do. Follow the crew on Twitter, Apple Podcast, and Spotify for podcast episodes. Lastly, if you're interested in sponsoring the show, email Chris Lee at chrislee70@gmail.com. And now, pull up a chair. It's time for another episode of the Vandy247 podcast.
Welcome into Vandy 24/7 live on the 440 Sports Network. I'm your host, Billy Derrick, alongside Joey Dwyer. Again, we're talking all things Vanderbilt hoops today, and that's brought to you by The Wash House. Are you dreading laundry day? Is it stealing time to do the things that you truly enjoy? Well, let the laundry professionals at The Wash House take care of that for you with 2 convenient locations in the greater Nashville area. Just drop off your dirty laundry, and their professional attendants can give you back the one thing you can never have enough of, your time. Within 24 hours, you can pick up your nicely folded, fresh and clean laundry ready to be put away. Log on to washhouseclean.com or stop in today and get your time back. Joey, what's going on?
Man, Billy, I can't see you right now. My contacts aren't in yet. Just woke up, but ready to go. Some people say I can talk Vandy basketball in my sleep, and we're going to be tested right now, actually.
Going through some adversity. I want to see how you respond today, Joey.
Strong chin.
Chin up.
Yes,
we got a lot to get to. Obviously, Vanderbilt and Alabama happened. We got our post-game thoughts out of the way. Luke and I got to it yesterday. Done with Alabama. Moving on to Kentucky. By the way, Joey, is Coach Byington speaking today?
He is, yeah. Check your email, Billy.
I didn't get an email.
Oh, that's a big issue.
Okay, so we will also be hearing from Mark Byington today ahead of Kentucky on Saturday, 1:30 tip-off on ESPN. I'm interested to see who's calling that game. My guess would be Jimmy Dykes is on the call, at least as the color analyst.
That's what I heard, yeah.
Okay, and that's the first time he's called a Vandy game, I want to say, since Kentucky 2015 or 16. Either way, it's been a while. And I was talking to somebody the other day. When Jimmy Dykes is back in Memorial, Vanderbilt basketball is back to a really good level. And they are. Now, it's not an elite level. Maybe it's not a great level, but this is a good level for Vanderbilt basketball. And Joey, I don't know if you remember his comments before the season about Vanderbilt. Everybody knows the job Mark Byington has done, and I mean, you get another win on Saturday, Joey, that just elevates you even more and gets more people talking about you. So we'll get to that Kentucky game, but I got an interesting topic here, Joey, and Clay's already on top of it. He knows the odds are out. The March Madness odds from John Rothstein are out. He put a tweet out. He said, "Buy stock now. Odds to make the 2025 NCAA tournament." He put yes or no odds for both of those. Vanderbilt, yes to make it is -235. No, +175. So pretty good odds if you bet Vanderbilt no right now to make the tournament. But I mean, that tells you their odds are good right now, at least, to make the NCAA tournament. It's early. It's still early, Joey, but I think those odds are interesting. And the Alabama loss, I'm going to get to some Bart Torvik numbers a little bit later, but the Alabama loss, numbers-wise, especially with Bart Torvik, really didn't hurt them much, right? I mean, the metrics were like, okay, that was what was supposed to happen, so we're not gonna damage you.
Yeah, I don't think that's a loss that they should really be penalized for either. Everybody loses there. Everybody has that loss. When you look at the whole resume, I think it's pretty easy to see why the odds are that way. They have 2 quad 1 wins, 2 wins in quad 2, no losses in quad 2 or 3, top 40 in the net. I mean, that checks all the boxes right now. And we know it's going to be more difficult. The rest of the way, they've got 4 games against non-ranked teams, which just a mind-boggling stat when you're in mid-January. And I think 2 or 3 of those games are on the road, so obviously not going to get easier from here. But right now, they're sitting pretty, and they would be in right now, and I don't think they would necessarily even be a bubble team right now. I think their resume is really good as it currently stands, but they've got a lot of work to do. And as we get closer to Selection Sunday, more teams are going to do things that are going to pass them, and honestly, that's okay. They've just got to get in, and that would be an unbelievable success for year one under Mark Byington. But we're going to go more into how likely it is that they're able to actually get there. But right now, you love what the resume is telling you, because I don't know that they've had a resume like this in years. And obviously, some of them fall apart when they look like this, and you have to play a gauntlet of an SEC schedule the rest of the way. But you got to feel pretty good about where they're at right now.
I don't know. I don't think this is the real MJ Collins, but he said we win by 10. I don't know if he's talking about this Saturday or not.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the real. If it's the real MJ Collins, I respect the boldness, but I'm gonna guess that it's not the Vanderbilt MJ Collins.
That's funny. Joey, we're gonna do some number crunching here. That's usually
if it's
Chris
the real
Lee.
MJ Collins. DM me on Twitter and tell me it's the real MJ Collins. I'll be checking my messages during the show.
How awesome would that be?
That would be great.
All right, it's number crunching time, Joey. That's usually Chris Lee's job.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to look at Bart Torvik numbers. You're going to look at Ken Pom numbers. And we're going to look at every remaining game on Vanderbilt's schedule and compare those numbers, and we'll add our own thoughts as well. But I'll start with Bart Torvik. He has their projected final record at 19-12 overall and 7-11 in the SEC. Joey, what does Ken Pom have?
Let's see. Ken Pom has them also at 19-12. When it's all said and done, they have them at 7-11 in the league. And obviously, the Ken Pom and Bart Torvik things are not projecting like they're going to beat these teams to get to 7-11. They're just saying the odds between kind of all their simulations are 7-11. So right now they have them beating Texas, they have them beating Missouri, and beating Arkansas. So that would give them 3 more league wins if those were to happen, but they're accounting for an upset or 2. And that's what it's going to take to get to 7-11 or 8-10, right? That's what they need to do. So you're looking at probably 1 or 2 more upsets they have to pull, and then if they can't beat one of those unranked teams, then they're going to have to get another upset. So that's where it currently stands. I'm looking at the other games that they aren't projecting them to win. The ones that they have the best odds in are actually Kentucky. They have a 40% chance to win, which kind of surprised me. I think the Torvik and Ken Pom projections are different there. Oklahoma, they got 33%. Mississippi or Ole Miss, they got 41%. And then Georgia, they have 31%. So even in the losses, I don't think it's a completely unreasonable idea, I guess, by Ken Pom that they could win those type of games. So the metrics are pretty high on them. Ken Pom right now has them at 48, which is lower than the net, but still pretty good. And the committee's obviously going to pay more attention to the net. So that was something that the team in 22-23 didn't have going for them, was that Ken Pom had them higher than the net. And I think by the end of the year, they were kind of even, but the net seems to be considerably higher on Vanderbilt than Ken Pom is right now. And I think it's a pretty good sign.
And going back to the Tennessee game, Ken Pom, I think, had that projected as a 7-point Tennessee win, 6 or 7 points, I think it was. So that tells you, like, you know, these are not always accurate. Now, again, that there are not a ton of people out there that expected Vanderbilt to come out and upset Tennessee. But looking at the Torvik numbers, same projected wins, projecting them to beat Texas 76-74. Close win against Ole Miss, 75-74. Close win against Missouri, 79-78. Not necessarily close against Arkansas, but 6-point win over Arkansas, 79-73. Those are the wins there. So right there, that's 4.
Okay, so they have one more than
yes.
Ken Pom does.
So one more project, but close, like minus 0.1 for Ole Miss, minus 0.2. Against Missouri. Some of the closer games they have them losing. Kentucky this Saturday, plus 1.2. They have that as an 87-85 loss. Plus 3. That's on the road at Oklahoma, correct, Joey?
Yes, on the road at
Okay.
Oklahoma.
So plus 3 in Norman. That, I think, that could be a huge win, again, for Vanderbilt to win. I think they can get – Torvik has them losing that by 3.
Mm-hmm.
Plus 13 at Florida, going to be tough. Plus 12 against Auburn at home, going to be tough. Plus 12 against Tennessee and Knoxville, going to be tough. Plus 10 at Rupp Arena, going to be tough. Doubt you pull out a win in those 4. Could be wrong. Could be wrong. But again, that's doubtful. And that, gosh, what a brutal stretch. And then,
Right.
and then A&M, they're plus 8 against A&M. And I can't remember if that's in College Station or not. But, and then at the end, Georgia plus 5. So really outside of Kentucky this Saturday, you're looking at Oklahoma plus 3 and then Georgia plus 5 as probably the most likely upsets to get to either 8 wins and by some miracle 9 wins. So that's kind of how Torvik lays it out. I don't know if you have any other details on KenPom, Joey, and how those numbers compare. But I think it's interesting looking at these at what Vanderbilt could do. This is what really good computer people think that could happen, and this is how, based on what they've done so far this season, this is what they project to happen.
Yeah, I just come back to how big that South Carolina win was when we look at these types of things, because you have to win the games that you're accounted to win. And obviously that doesn't have to always be the case, because Vanderbilt in 22-23 lost to LSU and then beat Kentucky and got themselves back in the conversation. But if you lose a game like you lost to South Carolina,
is this? I need confirmation. I need real confirmation here. MJ Collins.
Well, the real MJ Collins could be different to each type of right. The real MJ Collins doesn't necessarily have to be the Vanderbilt MJ Collins, right?
That's
Collins
true.
Is real.
MJ Collins
is real in our hearts.
MJ Collins feels like a common name, but anyway, we need.
Yeah, so my computer actually died, so I can't see if he DMs me, which is kind of a problem. So maybe DM Billy instead.
Okay, DM me, MJ, if this is you.
Okay, so I'm looking at it, and I'm just thinking that it was huge that they were able to beat South Carolina, because that changes some things down the road for them to where they don't have a quad 3 loss on their resume, and now they don't have to go beat Kentucky. Even at home, they don't have to beat Kentucky. They don't have to beat a team like that. And I do think they're going to have to get a game or two that they're not favored in to be able to win. And that's just basketball, right? You're never going to be able, unless you're Auburn or you're Kentucky or whoever, you're not going to be able to get in the tournament just by winning games that you're favored in. You got to win a couple. And, man, that's the story of the season for them, right? Is can they pull the 1 or 2 big upsets the rest of the way? Not even necessarily big. Can they beat Oklahoma? Can they beat Georgia? And can they win the games that they're favored in? They're in the tournament if they do that. They've already got 2 quad 1 wins. They've got a top 10 win on their resume. And that would be a heck of a resume if they take it into Selection Sunday. They just got to do the things they're supposed to do and then upset 1 or 2 more big teams. We're not asking for them to go beat Auburn at Memorial. We're not asking for them to beat Kentucky at Rupp. Just take care of business in the games you're supposed to and then go beat Georgia, go beat Oklahoma. That is a heck of a spot for them to be in year 1, Billy.
It absolutely is. And you're right about that South Carolina game, and I think this is the type of team, we look back to, in hindsight at that South Carolina game, but I think mentally this team's in a really good place. We talked about the mental fibers all the time with the baseball team and with Clark Lee, program infrastructure, the mental makeup. We talked a lot about that. That wasn't always the case with the football program. Even year 3, when we covered the 2-10 season, Joey, the mental makeup was just not there.
It wasn't always in year 4 either when they also
right.
the state.
Exactly. But with this basketball program, I'm stunned at how the mental makeup and the chemistry may not be perfect. I don't think there's not a perfectly built team in college basketball right now. With what's going on in the NIL and portal era. But it sounds like they like playing with each other, Joey, and it looks like they like playing with each other. And I mentioned this to Chris, I think it was on Monday, but when's the last time, like the Stackhouse era, we didn't see a ton of pumping up the crowd and trying to get the students involved. And like that Tennessee game, I hadn't seen that. Number one, hadn't seen the crowd like that. And we talked about it, but also the way they engaged with the crowd and the way they knew they needed the crowd. The crowd knew they were going to be a factor. Like, I know you haven't seen it like that, Joey, when you've been covering Vanderbilt, but that's what they've been needing. And the fact they've got a home court advantage now, whether it's Texas coming to town or Auburn. I mean, who knows if Broome will be back, but that's not a game Auburn's excited about. I don't think coming into Memorial I think that's a weeknight, but either way, like they've got the home court advantage back, and the way the players know they need the crowd, and Byington's talked about it, you just didn't see any of that. You didn't see a ton of it in the Stackhouse era, at least.
Yeah, I look back to the team I covered that actually did win some big games, and they didn't have quite the edge that this team had. They had some guys that were confident, like obviously Liam Robbins was confident, but a lot of their guys were soft-spoken. And
definitely not the defensive edge.
No, and this team I just think has more edge as a whole. Like Jason Edwards is a guy that team didn't have, a guy who was as confident as he is. They didn't have an MJ Collins who was just an energy guy and would take a shot that everyone else would say don't take, and he makes it. Like they didn't have guys like that on that team. They didn't have a Chris Magnon who said he could guard anybody in the country. Things along those lines. I think this team is different in that way, and that's a huge plus of it, and that's why they can maybe go and beat some teams that people don't expect them to. That's why they were able to beat Tennessee, is because of that edge they had. That's the key to pulling off a huge upset, is believing that you can pull off a huge upset. And this team is not a perfect group. It's a group of college guys, and groups of college guys obviously are never perfect, but I just look at it and say they're probably made of the right things. And as I look at it as it currently stands, I think they are. And I'm not necessarily saying that I expected that in the spring, just based off of kind of how Byington had built out this roster with guys from the portal, guys from a lot of different places, who some of them were guys that obviously didn't have the roles that they're going to have here, and some of them had to cut back their roles here, but it's actually worked. And I think that's a big testament to kind of how they've built this thing.
All right, Kentucky on Saturday, coming into Memorial. Let's get into the matchup. And I'm actually going to be recording with Aaron Gershon from Cat's Paws, the Kentucky site, later today. Well, he wasn't able to join live, but we're going to try to get that out tonight, maybe tomorrow morning, talk about the Kentucky side of things. But, Joey, this is not your typical Kentucky team, not in a bad way. This is still a really good team. But the way Mark Pope has built this team, they're old. They're explosive, but this is not your, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, John Wall type. Like Jackson Robinson's a really good shooter. Lamont Butler's a very steady point guard, but I don't know that, and I could be wrong here, I don't know that anybody truly scares you. Now, Amari Williams is a guy that scares me in this matchup for Vanderbilt, but I think they match up decently. Now, the bad part is Kentucky is a similar bad matchup as Alabama was. Kentucky's right behind Alabama in a lot of the scoring metrics in the country. They put up a lot of points, and they've got, and Tim Thompson mentioned this a couple of days ago, they've got better outside shooters in a lot of ways than Alabama. I mean, you never know if it's going to be Robinson or Brea, Travis Perry coming in there. I mean, they can shoot it from the outside with a lot of their bigs as well. What's the other guy's name?
Garrison.
Yeah, Brandon Garrison. I mean, they can pot, like they're athletic, but also Ainsley Almanor. He's a guy, I watched the Mississippi State game. He hit 3 or 4 huge threes in the second half. So this is a scary matchup, but number one, you're at home. And obviously we talked about the Torvik and Ken Palm numbers. They think it's going to be a close game. Carr's the other guy that can shoot threes as well. This could be a game that Vanderbilt struggles in like they did against Alabama, Joey. But if they made the right adjustments, I could see this being close. Either way, it'll be interesting. That Kentucky's got the shooters that Alabama didn't, and that's a little scary.
And they also don't turn it over. Kentucky's 7th in the country in offensive turnover rate. I don't know if they're going to kill Vanderbilt on the glass, but I think when Amari Williams is in the game, that's going to be a problem too. Their guards are tough. They don't defend at a super high level. I was reading something a couple of days ago about how Nate Oates was saying that that Kentucky team almost reminds him of that Alabama team last year that went to the Final Four, whereas they're just going to outscore everybody and beat everybody to 100. And that's a recipe for them. Their shooting is good enough to be able to do that. Kobe Brea is the best shooter in the country by pretty much every metric. Jackson Robinson's a really good shooter. Otega Owe has been better. So I just think that they have enough to where with their system and with what they do, they could make a deep run. And that's a team that's coming in a Memorial on Saturday, and they're not immune to a down outing because I think if they're similar to Alabama, if their shooting goes haywire, then Vanderbilt's got a chance in the game. But I also look at it as, man, this is another matchup that's similar to Alabama. The length on the floor probably won't be exactly the same. Alabama has the most, I think, height per position in the SEC based off somebody on our board posted yesterday. But I look at Kentucky as a team that's going to be another really tough matchup for Vanderbilt. I think their guards are tough. Their guards can get to the rim. They've got guys on the wing who can shoot it better than just about anybody in the country. And like we already mentioned, they've got a deep front court. And it's not a front court of unbelievable shot blockers like Big Cliff from Alabama, but it's deep. They've got Andrew Carr, who I think is an NBA player in some way. At some point, he's an NBA player. They've got 2 physical bigs in Amari Williams and Brandon Garrison, who are both good athletes. And then Ainsley Almanor is like a better Chris Magnon and bigger. So I just look at their roster and say, man, they can really do some damage. And I was told by somebody on a Nashville staff that's not Vanderbilt a couple weeks ago that he thought Kentucky could be a Final Four team simply because Mark Pope is running a mid-major style offense, which a lot of moving and cutting, a lot of unselfishness, and he's got Power 5 players buying into it. That matters too. And there's a lot to like about this Kentucky team. They're also not unbeatable, though. They're not a team with a bunch of top 5 picks like they've had the last couple of years. They're also veterans who probably are not susceptible to a down outing, though. Vanderbilt's going to have to beat them, and they're going to have to keep Jalen Carey and Devin McGloughlin on the floor. Those guys are going to have to play better than they did against Alabama. That was obviously a down outing for them. But, Billy, a lot to like about this Kentucky team. I don't know that there's a ton that Vanderbilt has up on them right now on paper.
One thing I want to keep in mind in this matchup is there's probably not of players on this Kentucky roster, probably not a lot of players on this Kentucky roster that have played at Memorial. And I think in Tennessee, some Tennessee players talked about that. Milicic after the game mentioned he was surprised by the level of noise. He thought, he talked about the benches being where they were, and it was just a different type place to play. Milicic had never played there. You look at some of the other Tennessee transfers, you didn't see a ton of Darlinson Dubar. He had never played. So, but you did see a lot of the normal Tennessee guys that have played at Memorial. But going through Tennessee's roster, the only guy I can think of is Kobe Brea, because Vanderbilt did play Dayton in an NIT game. I'm not sure if he was still at Dayton. But, do you know of any players that have played at Memorial before on this Kentucky roster, Joey?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I can't think of any off the top of my head. I think they are probably relatively new. What I will say is they're really experienced at the Power 5 level. They've got a guy from Oklahoma who played in all the Big 12 environments. They've got Jackson Robinson who did the same. Brea obviously played in some good ones, obviously at Memorial. Lamont Butler went to the Final Four. So I don't think they'll necessarily be fazed by what Memorial has, but I do think it is interesting to think about kind of the case study of guys who come in for the first time. Maybe that's something we should look into. We'll have to take out last year's data because I don't know if that one counts. I feel like everybody who came to Memorial for the first time last year just lit it up. But in past years and this year, I would think that guys who have played there before are a little bit better suited for it. Yeah,
I think that's something to remember. But Damani says can't let Owe or Amari get our bigs in foul trouble. Foul trouble is huge. Vanderbilt, against Alabama, the foul trouble was I mean, Vanderbilt sent Bama to the line every other possession, I feel like. I mean, Bama shot 34 free throws. Got to limit that. But I think on the other side, Joey, forcing Kentucky into some foul trouble, forcing their bigs, whether it's Garrison or Williams, forcing them to come outside on the three-point line and defend a Carey or even a McLaughlin, forcing them into some trouble. I think that's been a little bit of a key for this Vandy team, getting other teams in foul trouble. Look at the Alabama game. Bama was in a little bit of foul trouble too. It didn't matter. But the same sort of thing happened. Sears got his second foul towards the end of that first half. Oates didn't take him out for 7 minutes like Barnes did. But, if you can get a couple of Kentucky guards there, they have so much depth. Mm-hmm. I mean, you look at that Kentucky roster, and this could get out of hand just like Alabama. But again, it's going to be interesting to see, Joey. Number one, the crowd. Are there more Kentucky fans there than Tennessee fans? How does that affect it? But at the same time, what adjustments did Vanderbilt make after the Alabama game? And I'm interested. What are the things in your mind, Joey, that after watching that Alabama game, what does Vanderbilt have to change from that? What are the things Vanderbilt can't do the same? Because these are similar matchups, Bama and Kentucky.
Well, first of all, I can't shoot 6 of 24 from 2 feet in, and that was pretty heavily hindered by Big Cliff and Alabama blocking 9 shots as a whole. I think he's got to make better decisions in transition, and that's not just because of the Jason Edwards play where he got blocked by Holloway. I just think that's kind of been a theme throughout the year. The most pressing thing that came to mind, though, was the front court. I think Kentucky's is really good. I don't think it's anything that would worry a team that's not undersized and undermanned in the front court, but Jalen Carey can't get a second foul midway through the first half again like he did against Alabama. Devin McLaughlin has to be a little bit more of a presence. Those guys didn't shoot it very well as a whole. Even when you take out the threes, they didn't shoot it very well as a whole. So, man, they're going to have to make shots from 2 feet in. One of them's going to have to make more shots from the perimeter. McLaughlin did it against Alabama, and if they can get that same effort from the perimeter from those guys that they did against Alabama, that matters. But I look at the front court and say if they're going to have a chance in this game, they've got to have performances like they did against Tennessee from Carey and McLaughlin, particularly Carey. I think he's really the X factor in games like this. And their guards were fine-ish. Edwards, I thought, was fine. He was a little inefficient against Alabama, but I mean, what do you expect when it's your first time playing against a team like that? Hogard's got to be better than he was against Alabama. Nickel, I don't know if you can bank on him making 5 threes again. I think a 40% shooter isn't necessarily shooting 40% every game. He's up and down, so you never know what you're going to get with him. But where they're going to make up the difference of some of the uncharacteristic shots that they did make against Alabama is what they do in the front court. And I'm curious to see if they can do any of that on Saturday against a group that's more physical and deep than them.
And they're old, and they've played in NCAA tournament games. I was just looking at the Portal Hall from last year. Jackson Robinson, BYU, he played under Pope in the NCAA tournament last year. Fairleigh Dickinson, Almanor, they make it every year. I mean, it feels like, and I think they were in it last year. You also go Kirk Risa, who hasn't been healthy, West Virginia. I can't remember if they were in the tournament, but he's not playing.
He made it with Arizona years ago.
Yeah. So he's older. He's played. Dayton made it. Kobe Brea, led them. Brandon Garrison, Oklahoma State. Not sure they made it last year, but either way, good player.
Yeah.
Andrew Carr, Wake Forest, and then Owe, Oklahoma. Like you go through their hall, and it's easy to see. San Diego State, Lamont Butler. He made the Final Four, so it's easy to see what Pope's strategy was here. Get older guys that have played in March at a high level. And that's the challenge for Vanderbilt. You've got Hogard, you've got Nickel and Collins and some older guys, Edwards. How do you match up? I'm really interested to see what happens on Saturday. Either way, stay tuned for later tonight. I'm going to get Aaron Gershon on from Cat's Paws. He'll preview the Kentucky Vandy matchup from the Kentucky side of things. But Joey, it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, we're going to go talk to Coach Mark Byington. I'll get Jacob to send me the email. But any parting thoughts ahead of Saturday's game?
I think Clay Francis needs to bring more questions today. He was off his
I
game
know.
today. From what I mean, I didn't look at the chat, but I didn't see many of them on the screen. So,
Clay's usually dominating the chat.
right, let's get back to dominance next week. Oh, there we go.
There you go.
There we go. Was that recent or did you just bring that up?
That was 2 minutes ago.
Okay, good. So he's still here and
He's
still
still
making his
there.
presence felt. That's what I like to see. But
Love it.
I think this is a big game for Vanderbilt. I mean, if you win like you did against Tennessee, then you can bring more people. And if you win against Kentucky the week after you beat Tennessee, that place is going to be jumping the rest of the year. So it's a big one. I don't know if it's one they have to win because I think there's other better opportunities for them to pick off some wins that they're not favored in. But it is a game that could, again, alter the outlook of their season. It's pretty hard to see them not being an NCAA tournament team if they don't beat or if they beat Kentucky at Memorial. So big one, Billy, and another good barometer to see where they're at, see how fluky the Alabama game was, or how much of reality that is, because they're not seeing the same team, but a team that's not super dissimilar from them either.
Yeah, we got the two extremes. We got them knocking off Tennessee at home, and then we got them, getting maybe not ran off the floor, but beaten pretty handily there in Tuscaloosa. Either way, Vandy and Kentucky. I'm interested to see who's on the call. Again, hearing that it's Jimmy Dykes, try to get confirmation today. ESPN. It's going to be another phenomenal atmosphere at Memorial Gym. We'll have all the coverage the rest of the week leading up to tip-off, and hopefully we'll see some of you guys there. Either way, follow us on Twitter, subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video, comment, keep the comments rolling in. Again, I'm going to get one more recorded video in tonight, so stay tuned for that. Also, if you're interested in sponsoring the show, email Chrisley at chrisley70@gmail.com. For Joey Dwyer, I'm Billy Derrick. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you again soon with more episodes of the Vandy 247 podcast.